Welcome to the Ask Reverend Lee Show. We're so happy and delighted that you could join us, and we thank you for doing so. Again, let me say welcome to the Ask Reverend Lee Gospel Program. This is a religious form program designed to help others get closer to God. I'm your host, Evangelist Lee McLean, and do we have an interesting, exciting, and attractive program planned for you today? This is a question and answer format program designed to help others get closer to God. We want the listening and viewing audience to come into a personal saving knowledge with Jesus the Christ, and this program today is going to do just that. As usual, we will have read a passage of Scripture with a brief explanation, then we will have a prayer and go into a discussion of today's question and answer. This is the day that the Lord has made, and we will rejoice and be glad in it. I'm going to read a passage of Scripture from the New Testament, the book of Galatians, chapter 4. I'm going to read 4 through 11. And in reading chapter 4, verses 4 through 11, we're going to be talking about the good news of Christianity. That's what we want. That's what we want to talk about. We want to talk about the good news of Christianity. What makes Christianity so good, or what makes it good news that none of the other religions of the world can compare? That's the discussion. What makes Christianity so valuable, so invaluable, that none of the other religions of the world can compare? And I'm going to be reading from Galatians chapter 4, verses 4 through 11. And there you find these words recorded. But when the fullness of the time was come, God sent forth his Son, made or born of a woman, made under the law. Why? To redeem them that were under the law. Now, this law is not the Mosaic law. This is the Adamic law, the law that Adam broke, not the law that was given to Moses. When you're reading out of the New Testament, you're concerned with Adam. If you're a Gentile, you're not concerned with the Mosaic law and the Levitical priesthood. I wish I could say this more strongly. But the Levitical priesthood and the Mosaic law pertain to Israel and Israel only. It did not pertain to the rest of the world. Now, I'm still in verse 4. Galatians chapter 4, verse 4. But when the fullness of the time was come, God sent forth his Son, made of a woman, made under the law, the Adamic law, to redeem them that were under the law, that we might receive the adoption of sons. And because ye are sons, God has sent forth the Spirit of his Son into our hearts, crying, Abba, Father. Wherefore, thou art no more a servant or slave, but a son. And if a son, then an heir of God through Christ. Howbeit, then, when ye knew not God, ye did service unto them which by nature are no gods. But now, after that ye have known God, or rather are known of God, how turn ye again to the weak and beggarly elements whereunto ye desire again to be in bondage? Brief explanation. Before the coming of Jesus Christ, and for 1,500 to 2,000 years, Israel was the divine presence of God here on earth. And many of the other nations of the world, their people expressed a faith in the God of Israel and were accepted individually. But there were no wholesale nations coming into Israel. So, here in verse 9, but now after that ye have known God, or rather are known by God, after you have become a Christian, don't go back to the Old Testament Mosaic law and Levitical priesthood. When the fullness of time has come, the Levitical priesthood and the Mosaic law cease to be a means of gaining access to God. That's what I'm reading here in Galatians chapter 4, verses 4 through 9. I'm up to 9. Ye observe days. He's talking about Gentiles going back to observe days and months and times and years. I'm afraid of you, lest I have bestowed upon you labor in vain. I'm afraid of you, the Apostle Paul is saying, unless you did not believe the New Testament gospel. Now you want to revert back to what was, but it's not now for us Gentiles. Verse 11, I'm afraid of you, lest I have bestowed upon you labor in vain. Have I preached the gospel to you in vain? Now that's for Galatians 4. If I turn back, I'm going to read 3. He puts it a little stronger in Galatians chapter 3, verses 3 to 5. And let me read that. O foolish Galatians, who has bewitched you, that ye should not obey the truth, before whose eyes Jesus Christ has been evidently set forth, crucified among you. What he's saying is, why go back to the Mosaic law and follow the Levitical priesthood? You're a Gentile. I brought a new covenant. That's what he's saying. This, verse 2, this only would I learn of you. Receive ye the Spirit by the works of the law, or by the hearing of faith? By the works of the law or the hearing of faith? Now here, this law, the Jewish people were trying to get the Gentile Galatians to leave their faith in Jesus Christ and Christianity and go back to the Mosaic law and the Levitical priesthood, circumcision, and keeping the law of Moses. So Paul is arguing against it. Here it is, 2,000 years ago, the Apostle Paul was arguing against the Gentiles going back to the Levitical priesthood and the Mosaic law, and come here this 26th day of September in 2011, the Christian church, some in the Christian church want to go back and follow and incorporate into Christianity elements of the Mosaic law in the Levitical priesthood. It's an exercise in futility to do that. It's no sin if you do, and it's no sin if you don't. It's zero, no benefits. So why do it? And this is what Paul is saying. You have something far better. Chapter 3, verses 4. Have ye suffered so many things in vain? Have you been persecuted for your faith in Jesus Christ in vain, like the church is being persecuted today, being called old-fashioned, outdated, because we hold to the truths of this Bible, the New Testament of Jesus Christ? Verse 4, have ye suffered so many things in vain, if it be yet in vain? He therefore that ministers to you the Spirit. We're not talking about obedience to the law, following the Mosaic law and the rituals. We're talking about obedience to the Spirit. He therefore that ministereth to you, or supply you the Spirit, and worketh miracles among you, does he it by the works of the law, or by the hearing of faith? Are you in a right relationship with God because you were circumcised, obeyed the 10 Commandments, the Mosaic law, and performed those rituals and celebrated Saturdays and holidays? Are you in a right standing with God because of that, or because you heard the gospel, the good news of Jesus Christ in faith? Because, as the scripture read in Galatians chapter 4, verses 4 says, but when the fullness of the time was come, and the fullness of the time that has come is that time which was prophesied in Genesis chapter 49, verse 10. What God had foretold in Genesis chapter 49, verse 10, came to pass in Jesus of Nazareth. That's what the Bible is saying. Genesis chapter 10. I'm going to go back there, and then we're going to pray and go into a discussion of today's question and answer. Genesis chapter 49, verse 10. We're talking about when the fullness of time is come. What's that fullness of time that come? Well, God told us 4,000 years ago, or 2,000, 4,000 years ago. He told us when the fullness of time would come. Verse 10, the sepulchre. The sepulchre shall not depart from Judah, nor a lawgiver from between his feet until Shiloh come, and unto him shall the gathering of the people be. That's what he's talking about. Genesis chapter 49, verse 10 is an explanation of Genesis chapter 12, verse 3. Genesis chapter 12, verse 3. Genesis chapter 12, verse 3 is a prelude to Genesis chapter 49, verses 10. Genesis verse 12, verse 3. And I will bless them that bless thee, and curse him that